Hey guys, Will Terry here, and I thought I'd make a video on the amount of money that I'm going to be able to keep from my Kickstarter. In other words, the amount that I'll get personally to spend on whatever I want to spend it on. And I think this is a video that people have wondered about a lot. And I think this is a topic that a lot of people have wondered about. Not too many people share their numbers. I don't know why. On this channel, I've always tried to be really transparent and give illustrators and artists the information that they're really looking for. So as I get going, I'm just going to share with you my Kickstarter that is actually has 6 days left, and it just went up a little bit. There's 5,600 backers, and we're at $183,000 and 6 days left. And so the reason why I wanted to make this video is a lot of people look at this number and obviously they're wondering, how much does the artist get to keep? What are the expenses? And so we're going to go through all that and hopefully help you understand, in case you're doing your own Kickstarter, kind of what to plan for and things. I made another video and I'll link it in the description when I was starting this Kickstarter. And I just kind of basically gave a little background information. So if you want to know more about this Kickstarter, you can go and watch that video. We did fund in 5 minutes, so we put that banner up there, and I recorded that on a Facebook Live just because I thought it would be really fun to see if we could, how fast we could fund. And we had really done a lot of work behind the scenes to get as many people to pledge who had already said they wanted this book. And we try to get them to pledge through incentives to get the book as fast as they could, so we could fund quicker, and that really helps us in the Kickstarter algorithms. So anyway, this is where we're at right now, and I'm gonna base. So right now, with 6 days left, I feel pretty confident that we'll make it to 200,000, and that's what I'm gonna base my numbers on because it's such a nice, clean, round number. So that's what I'm looking for. We're actually trending for higher than 200,000, but I'm just going to base it on if the final day, the final minute, it made it to $200,000. That's what we're going to go with. Okay, so I'm going to start there, and I guess I'll just write that down, $200,000. And let's just go through some of my personal expenses. Now, these expenses are, if you do a Kickstarter, your expenses are going to be different. But in talking with a lot of friends who have done Kickstarters, a lot of colleagues, when you're making a book, for instance, there's a lot of similarities. And so if a book is your project, then this might actually help with these numbers. Now, obviously, if you're doing other projects, there might be more a higher cost involved. But anyway, there were some first few little expenses. Like the first thing I did was I got a Kickstarter video, and that's the video that plays at the beginning of my Kickstarter. And I didn't want to do that myself because I wanted to hire someone who was really qualified and who's really good at it. You can do your own video. There's a lot of people that are going without a video on Kickstarter. I've seen some projects do quite well on Kickstarter without a video. So you don't necessarily have to do one. I personally like it because I like to be able to, I think it's a personal touch. I want people to know who's bringing the project to them. So that video cost me $400. So we're just going to throw that in there. And then we actually started a company. And when I say we, I partnered with a marketing guy named Ian. And so he and I started this company to own this book and any other projects we do together if we choose to do other projects. It just keeps it more clean from other businesses that you have. And you're going to have to provide a business bank account to Kickstarter so that when the Kickstarter's over, they can dump the money into a business bank account. And so we had to get a license. And if I spell things wrong, I apologize. And I'm just throwing these little fees in there. We had to get our articles of incorporation because we formed an LLC. And that was $48. And then, so those are small expenses. Now I've got the Kickstarter page laid out. I've got my video. And then prior to all this, because I had written the book before I actually started that, so maybe that should have gone on there first. Well, I paid an editor. I can't spell and talk at the same time. Editor. $1,000 to edit this book. And that's Kim McPherson, and she is a really good editor. She used to edit for Kaplan and other companies, and she's a freelance editor. And I wanted my book to be, I wanted it to be done right. So I didn't want to leave anything to chance, and I didn't want there to be any possibility of it looking hokey or anything like that. I just really wanted her to go through the whole thing and make it sound and make sure the punctuation and everything was good. So I paid an editor, and then I paid these expenses out of my own pocket. So I just came up with that money. The designer, the graphic designer, is going to be $12,000 roughly. So that's an expensive part of the book. But the thing there is, I feel like it's totally worth it. Some people might say, well, you could have got that cheaper. I really believe in going with the person that you think will do the best job, and the person that is, where you've seen their work, and you just, with doing something like this, I really care about this book. It's not about, for me, it's not about getting the rock bottom cheapest designer. It's about getting the book to look the best. And a lot of people, graphic designers are like unsung heroes. Like, no one really knows what they do until you don't have a designer. And you can tell a lot of self-published books because they took their project to the printer, and the printer just had their way with, they have an artist at the printer, or someone who's filling in for a graphic designer, just someone, often it's someone who's not trained, and it would take hours for me to explain exactly what a graphic designer is trained in, what they do, all the little tiny things. There are things that you just don't know until you've seen bad graphic design. I'll put it that way. So $12,000 for the graphic designer. Then I had contributors in the book. Now these expenses from here on out are going to be expenses that are going to come out of the Kickstarter raise. So, these ones, again, I came up with out of pocket, so I'll get reimbursed that from the Kickstarter money. But these next ones are, I didn't get the designer to start working on this book until we passed our funding goal. So once we pass our funding goal, the book's going to fund, there's going to be money there, then I can get the designer started with the promise to pay her out of the Kickstarter raise. Contributors are going to cost $1,750, and I put that, those are the other artists that are in the book that gave their advice, and so I paid each one of them, or I'm going to pay each one of them out of the raise. So I'm just looking at my notes over here. So then I have books, and books right now are, this is an estimate right now. I have some solid prices, but they're based on the quantities of books that we order. And I won't know the quantity of books we order until the Kickstarter is completely over with. And then we're going to make calculations because we want to sell books after the Kickstarter. And so I just really won't know that until the end. But my best guess is that I'm at $33,000 for books, for book costs. And that's hard and soft bound books. And then that gets books printed in China and shipped to LA. But then I have to ship those books to Utah. So I'll just put ship to Utah, to Salt Lake City. And the estimate there, I'm estimating a little bit high, but it's going to be about $2,500. And so then there's that expense. And I'm going to add all these up and we're going to look at it. And then let's take a look at Kickstarter. So if we raise 200,000, Kickstarter takes 5%. So I'm going to put Kickstarter at 5%. So that's going to be $10,000 is what they would get. And then there's the Stripe fees, and that's like the Visa processing. And that's anywhere from 3 to 5%. And rather than say hoping it's 3% or 4%, I'm just going to figure, because that's what it can be. I always like to figure worst case scenario. And then so we're working with a funding company. And the funding company is a marketing company that they're buying ads on social media, and they're creating those ads and they're spending their own money, and then they get money back. And so what it's looking like right now from that funding company, without going into a huge explanation, it's funny because I actually go into the explanation in the book of everything that they do and how it works. But for this video, it would take too long. But in short, I can tell you that what they do is they make ads for my book, and they place them on Instagram and Facebook. And I think those are the only two sites that they're putting them on right now. So they put them on there, and then they track those ads. They track because they have their own unique links to the Kickstarter. They can tell if someone actually goes through and makes a purchase from the ad. So they can only track people that go directly from the ad and then buy on Kickstarter. And then what they do is they get a percentage of that sale. So the way it works, and it's really complicated, but basically in a nutshell, they get 50% of every sale they make. So if, on the Kickstarter I have like basically a $40 hardback, a $30 softback, and a $20 digital. So whatever they buy, if they buy the $40 book, then the funding company will get $20. And how that works for us is we just make a lot less on those sales, but we still make money because our costs are such. We got the book cost down low enough that we will still make a profit on those sales. Nowhere near what we would have made. But we also didn't get that customer to come to the Kickstarter. So the math works out, and that's a whole nother thing to look at. You have to make sure that in order to use a funding company, you have to make sure that your production costs are low enough that it's worth it. In some cases, for instance, if your production costs or per item cost was percentage-wise was too high, you could actually lose money using a funding company with those numbers there. So, production costs, and our books are going to be probably somewhere in the $5 range, 4 to 5, somewhere in there. So our book costs are pretty low, but with all these other expenses, they have to be, or else, it's almost impossible to make a profit. So you have to be very careful when you're doing something like this to really shop around. In fact, I don't really want to use the companies and give you their names because I don't think that would be right to do. But one company quoted us $11 per book. Another company quoted us $8 per book, and with shipping involved and everything, it looks like the one we're going with is going to be about $5. So there's a huge difference you can see. And this one is really still high quality. It's just that I believe that the broker that we're using there, the way that they're set up, they run out of their house. They don't print out of their house. It's a big, huge printer that they have a relationship with. But they do all the deal. They set everything up, and they printed a lot of books. And we actually went to them and looked at books that they had done, and I needed to see the quality. I'm never going to get a chance to do this book again. So this book had to be, it had to just look the best. And so we got samples. I got hardcover books from this this printer that they had printed it from this actual printer in China, and it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. And I think other companies just have, maybe they're more established, maybe they have a higher overhead, and they just need to make more. And I think, quite frankly, a lot of them rely on the fact that our people that go to them to self-publish a book like I am aren't going to do their homework, and aren't going to find someone or have someone find them. In this case, this printer found me, who's willing to give a better deal because maybe they have a lot less overhead. That's all I can think of. So anyway, the way that the funding company works is they spend money, and they buy ads, and then as sales come back, what they try to do is they try to spend $1 and they try to bring $3 back in. So for every dollar they spend, they try to get $3. So if they bought $1,000 in Facebook ads, they need to get minimum $3,000 coming back. If they spent, $2,000, they need $6,000 coming back. It's a 3-to-1 ratio. And when they get an ad that's producing like that, they'll run it until it stops producing like that. But basically, there's just the way that the percentages work, it's about 50% is what they get. So if they were to spend, let's say they were to spend 35. Well, let's say they were. Let's scratch that. Let's say they they were responsible for $70,000 of revenue coming out of the 200. Let's say whatever they spent generated $70,000 in sales. Okay, so I'm just going to use that as a number. Then out of that 70, we would owe them $35,000. So I'm going to put that in there because it looks like that might be where it's at right there. So, and I'm figuring high on that as well. And then there's fulfillment. So we have fulfillment costs. And I'm not really sure exactly. I've looked over the fulfillment. It's a little difficult to understand, but one of the benefits of a fulfillment company is they're the ones that actually package up and put a label on and ship out. And so we're dealing with, again, I'll just bring this down here again, like we're dealing with 5601 backers. And if you've ever dealt with, like I used to mail postcards out. For a while I had 1,000 people on my mailing list, and then I ended up with 4,000. But when I had 1,000, when I first got to 1,000 people on my mailing list, this is direct mail that I was sending postcards to companies to get freelance illustration work. When you put labels on 1,000 postcards, you're sitting there watching a show or, and just label after label after label, you realize how much 1,000 is. And 1,000, taking 1,000 books and putting them in packages and getting the label put on there and the postage sticker on there, and preparing 1,000 and dealing with different zip codes and different pledges, different books. We have softbacks, we have hardbacks, we have a pledge level with 2 hardbacks, and during the survey, for the checkout survey, there's going to be print add-ons and book add-ons that people can do, and so that's going to complicate the order. And so I think once you get to 500 or maybe like 500 to even 1,000 backers, you're at the limit of what you could do out of your house. I just think that it would be a nightmare to try to receive. I mean, I'm going to end up with pallets of books, and I'm going to have to sign 1,000 books. So I'm looking for a fulfillment company where I can actually have the books delivered to them, because I don't have a place to put pallets and pallets of cases of books at my house. So I've got to have the fulfillment company receive those books. Then I'm gonna have to go over there and sign. We've sold 1,000 signed hardbacks. I'm gonna have to sign those. And anyway, that's what a fulfillment company does. They they take your books, they receive them, they package them up, they label them, they put the postage on, and they send them out. One of the advantages that they give us is, because they have bulk permits and because they mail so many parcels to the same zip code, they can get cheaper rates on postage, cheaper than I could get as an individual. And because of that, they can pass on some of those savings to me and ultimately to the people who back the book. So having them fulfill in many ways is cheaper than if I could do it myself. And what the prices they've quoted us are right at the same level of shipping. I mean, they have to be able to stay in business. They can't charge too much, or no one will be able to afford to use them. So they really are taking the bulk postage fees and passing that on to their customers, knowing that their customers can't get those same rates, and that makes it worth it, so that their customers are actually paying the same shipping, roughly the same shipping that they would. Or, if it goes over the same amount that it costs to ship, then that will have to come out of the Kickstarter. So right now, that's a pretty big question mark. It's looking like, from the quote that we got, it's looking like it's not going to cost us much, but there are fees. And so I'm going to put them down at $2,000 right now, because those are just the initial setup fees and startup fees. And we're going to just kind of see where it's at. But basically, their cost is the cost of shipping, which the backers will pay. So with those fees, and then I will also I have Ian, and he has a percentage, and I don't have permission to share his percentage, so I'm not going to. But he will get a percentage of the total. So I'm just going to bring up the calculator and do a little math here. So let's see, we got 400 plus 22 plus 48 plus 1,000, 12,000 for the designer, 1,750 for the contributors. We got books at $33,000. We've got shipping to Utah. And that might change also, that shipping. There's a comma in there, by the way. That's not a 3. That's a comma right there. That could change, because there's a possibility that I can leave some of the books to ship from China out to the backers and only have to bring 1,000 or so here for me to sign and then ship from here. So not exactly sure how that's going to play out. And then Kickstarter 10,000. And then Stripe 10,000. And then funding 35,000. And then fulfillment at 2,000. Now, of course, some of those costs are already fixed, like the designer and the editor and those earlier expenses. Some of these later ones are yet to play out. So those look like our expenses. So that would leave, we're going to round and just say that's 108,000 expenses out of the 200. So that would leave us with 92,000 and we'll just call that after expenses. After expenses, and then I pay Ian out of that, and then I get the rest, and I'm in a 20% tax bracket. So you can kind of see there that I will say this: I get more than Ian. Haha, Ian. But Ian gets a pretty good share because he's done a lot of the marketing on this, and I always feel like it's better to partner with someone and have them work really hard, and he's worked really hard. He's also going to be doing work after the Kickstarter to sell books, and we have some other projects planned. They're not in the works yet, but they're kind of in the planning stage right now. But that, hopefully that kind of gives you an idea. A lot of times people will look at a Kickstarter and they look at the total and they just think, wow, that person is getting, all that money. And, there's a pretty good chunk. Now I'm going to get a pretty good payday, but there's something else you got to keep in mind is I've turned down a lot of freelance work because this was such a big project and this took months and months to do. I could easily say it took 30 years to do, because it did. But with the actual, I have a lot of months involved in this, where I was either taking less freelance or turning down freelance. I turned down quite a bit, and made some other sacrifices to get this done. So the thing that a lot of people get into or forget about is, there are costs no matter what. There are opportunity costs no matter what project you take on, no matter what you choose to do with your time. That means you're not doing something else. And so, this is going to be a good payday, but at the same time, I've structured my business now to where I don't do anywhere near the freelance that I used to do. I used for, the first 20 years of maybe 20, but right around 20 years, 22 years was all freelance. And now I split my time between SVS Learn, and doing my own projects like this and freelance. And I remember I was doing all those comic conventions, but a lot of those got shut down. So I've kind of had to shift and do other things. I feel truly blessed. I mean, this project has gone way beyond my wildest dreams, but I really like sharing this kind of information with you guys, because I think it really helps to be able to plan something like this if you're contemplating a project, to be realistic. I did talk about in the other video the fact that we set our funding goal really low, and I give justification for why we did that. There was a no man's land in there, and I can't remember if I talked about this or not. I don't think I did, but we set our funding goal for 6,000, and between 6,000 and about 35,000 was a no man's land, an NML. I don't know if that's an acronym that's ever been used before, but now it has. And that means that if our funding had landed somewhere in here, we would have been screwed. That's a screw right there. Because we wouldn't have had enough money to do the books, and I would have had to dip into my own personal money to make it happen. But I felt like, I knew that we were going to fund beyond 35,000 based on other things I did and the reach that I had on my social media and stuff, that, I was really confident that we would easily go past that. And we did. And I think in the second day, first or second day, we got that high. So I wasn't worried about it. But a word of caution, because I'm always leery that someone's going to follow what I did without having the same knowledge. You can game the Kickstarter algorithms by you game the Kickstarter algorithms by setting your funding low, your funding goal low. It's late at night and I'm trying to concentrate right now. And if you fund quicker, you get moved higher on the ranks on the algorithms on Kickstarter. So it's really important to fund really quickly. The problem is if you're not getting enough money after you fund quickly because you didn't ask for enough money, then you could be in that no man's land. So I always want to make sure that everyone knows that I'm not suggesting that you do that you set it low. I chose to do that because I knew that I would get to where I needed to be no matter what. And I could have set that funding goal at 3,000, and Ian wanted to set it at 3,000. And the reason that I kind of talked him out of that is I said that really looks unrealistic. I don't think anyone would believe that you could get a book printed for 3,000, and I don't know where 6,000 came from, but it just sounded like more than 3,000. So, anyway, the thing that you want though is, when you do your Kickstarter is. You want to get as much help from Kickstarter as you can by moving up in those ranks, and so that's why I talked about that. Anyway, that's the gist of it. I hope this video helps. And if you've come to this video after the Kickstarter, you can just go to Well-Fed Illustrators. And if you've come to this video after the Kickstarter is over, you can just go to wellfedillustrators.com. It won't look exactly like this, but this is the URL up here, wellfedillustrators.com, and you can buy the book there. It'll be available there after the Kickstarter, and while supplies last. I mean, we're going to print more than we need, but eventually we will probably run out, and so. Just letting you know that. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. I hope it helps you guys out there. I'd love to hear in the comments what you think about it. If you think I left anything out, if I forgot anything, or if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in there and I'll check the comments for a while. I usually check comments for like the first week just to see, because I feel like most of the activity is going to happen in that first week. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.